Okay, now I'd like to say a couple more things about your project. We're managing a common pool resource on campus, and this video is especially important for people who are playing the part of matrix facilitator and or debriefer. So the ideas I'm going to show you now come from this approach to working in groups, or this approach to teamwork called pro-social. It's an approach to collaborative sort of decision-making and teamwork that's based in large measure on the findings of Elinor Ostrom. Specifically, what they're trying to do is to try to find ways to organize groups that function around these 8 core design principles that I talked about in the last video. So trying to find shared identity and purpose, the equitable distribution of contributions and benefits, fair and inclusive decision-making, ways to monitor agreed behavior, graduated responses to helpful and unhelpful behavior, fast and fair conflict resolution, giving people the authority to self-govern, and ways for having collaborative relationships with other groups. And the tool that I want to talk about now is what they call the matrix, the ACT matrix. And this is a tool especially designed for trying to identify shared identity and purpose in a group. It's a way to try to basically identify what's the core purpose of the group that you're involved in. And in this case, right, you can use these 8 core principles not only to understand how to manage a common pool resource, but really there are ways to help you understand how to function successfully in a group. And this is what pro-social does. You can think of these 8 core design principles as principles that are operative in most well-functioning groups. So one thing that well-functioning groups need is to have a shared identity and common purpose, right? To have shared goals, things that they care about in common. So that what the matrix facilitator is going to do is going to help your group think about what your shared identity is and what your shared purpose is in doing this activity. Again, that's what the matrix facilitator does. So they're going to use the pro-social matrix, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, and they're going to use it to kind of organize a discussion within your own team about what your shared purpose is. So like all the meetings that you're supposed to conduct, this discussion needs to be recorded, and it's going to be submitted at the end of the term as part of the work that the facilitator does. So if you're the matrix facilitator, you're going to want to give me a link to this conversation to show me what a great job you did facilitating it. And you're also going to want to submit a copy of the pro-social matrix with your notes in it about the team's discussion. So I'm going to share that with you. It's a PowerPoint. I'm going to go through it in this video, but I'm also going to share the PowerPoint with you. And as you're going through the PowerPoint with your team and recording that conversation, you also need to be taking notes about what the different members of your team say in response to the questions. So the matrix consists of 4 quadrants. So there's 2 lines dividing 4 quadrants. And the top 2 quadrants consists of things that exist in the heart or the mind, right? So these are thoughts, feelings, beliefs that you're exploring. And these are things that other people can't see. They're not out there in the world. And then in the bottom 2 quadrants, you're talking about behaviors, stuff that you actually do in the world, stuff that other people can see you doing. So the matrix, first and foremost, is a way to divide the world into things that are invisible, thoughts, feelings, things that you care about, and things that you can see, behavior, actions in the world. And then on the right side of the matrix, if you're facing it, it's the right side. These are thoughts and feelings and actions where you're moving towards a goal, where you feel like you're trying to achieve something. And on the other side, these are thoughts and feelings that move you away from your goals, that sort of repel you and take you off track. And so what you're doing when you're having a conversation with other people about the matrix is you're trying to figure out, well, what are the thoughts and feelings that we share in common as a group, that we care about, and that motivate us to move towards our goals? And what are the things that will move us away from our goals, that prevent us from being a successful group? The matrix basically unfolds as a series of questions. So if you're the matrix facilitator, this is where you start. You start in the top right-hand quadrant, and this is where you're asking people in your group about what they think, what their beliefs are, how they feel about things. And the question that kind of kicks things off is, what matters most to us as members of this group? What is our shared purpose? And then you just have an open conversation, right? So as a facilitator, you ask this question and you record the answers of the members of your group, and you record your own answer too. And the idea is that in this part of the conversation is you're trying to find common ground, like what aspects of this work that we're doing together do we care about? So it can be something as straightforward as, well, we all care about getting a decent mark on this assignment. But that's pretty banal, and it's probably, it's not going to be a very helpful answer because it's sort of true of everyone. Everybody wants to get a good mark, but most people don't do the work that it takes to get a good mark. So you want to find something that you care about, that you share in common, that will actually motivate you to work more than just simply wanting to have a good mark. So, what other common or shared interests might you have? Well, you might have an interest in sort of like knowing how to work in a productive team. And that's part of this process is learning how to do productive work in a collaborative group. Or, you might have an interest in environmentalism. So a big part of environmentalism is actually getting human beings to work together in a cooperative way to take care of our natural resources. All right. And that's essentially what we're talking about here. So if you get a better grip on some of the ideas involved in this sort of project, you're sort of moving further along in your goal towards, understanding how to create a world where people actually cooperate productively, this sort of thing. Yeah, it could be anything. It's up to your group to say, to sort of talk about, what they care about. And then after that discussion, you'll move over into the top left quadrant where you ask people, well, what are the thoughts or feelings that might get in the way of us moving towards our goals that we identified in quadrant one? And again, like there's no pre-established answers here. This might be unique to your group. Well, what are the sorts of thoughts and feelings that come up that prevent you from working productively in groups, or that prevents you from working productively in general? And what you're doing here is you're just making an account of all the things that might hinder you and prevent you from working productively in this group. And then you move down into the lower left quadrant. And again, this is where you're moving away from your goals. And so the idea here is that you ask yourselves as a group, what might we do to move away from the thoughts and feelings identified in section 3? Section 3, right, in the upper left quadrant, you're up here and you're identifying these thoughts and feelings that are kind of like get in the way of you doing the work. And then here you're talking about the behaviors that those feelings give rise to. So say, maybe one thought or feeling that might get in the way up here is like, oh, I can't do this. I don't really, like, I'm not good enough to contribute to this group. I might not be able to be a productive member. And then that might lead you to have avoidant behaviors like not respond to emails, not show up to the Zoom meetings. There's all kinds of behaviors where we get in our own way and prevent ourselves from being successful. And what we're trying to do here is to prevent that from happening by getting a clear picture of what our emotional and belief sort of triggers might be, the things that prevent us from contributing productively to a group, and then very clearly identifying the types of behaviors that we engage in when we're trying to avoid those negative feelings, all for the purpose of, ultimately being successful, right? Identifying the things that might get in our way so that we can avoid them and not do them. And then we move over here back into the towards column, right? So you ask yourself, or you ask the group, what could we do to move in the direction of our shared purpose? So what kind of behaviors can we engage in as a group that would be super productive, that would allow us to achieve our common aim? Everything that you can think of that will make you a productive group. Clear communication, timely communication, actually showing up for each other, actually contributing and doing our own part within the process, not slacking. Everything that you can think of. And so basically, once you've gone through this process, you have a picture, right? You have a picture of what actually matters to us as a group. What are the things that we really care about? What do we want to accomplish here with this project? What are the thoughts and feelings that might get in the way of us doing that? What are the behaviors that we might engage in that are kind of destructive to our aims, that get in the way of us being successful as a group? And then on the other hand, what are the positive behaviors, right? What are the things that we know that if we do them, we will succeed in this group? This is it. I mean, this is what the pro-social matrix is. It's just a conversation with the members of your group where you're trying to identify the goals that you share in common, right? The things that you all care about, the things that you want to get out of this group, the thoughts and feelings that might get in the way of you being successful, the behaviors that might get in the way of you being successful, and the behaviors that if you engage in them, you will definitely be successful in this group. So it's a process that's designed to get everybody on the same page in terms of thinking about their common interests and their shared purpose, and also to identify potential hindrances, but also potential avenues of success in pursuing those shared goals. Okay, and this is the last question in the conversation. So once you identify and make all this stuff clear, you sort of say to the group, well, what are we going to do next? And what this conversation is about really is like, what are the immediate steps that we're going to take in order to do all the stuff that we identified here, all the things that are going to make us successful as a group? What's the next step in that process? So being the matrix facilitator means taking your group through a conversation about all these questions, taking notes on how they respond to those questions. And then, you want to record the conversation on Zoom and you want to submit it to me along with all of your notes on how your group answered these respective questions. Okay, so that is the tool that I'm giving to the matrix facilitators. And that's essentially what I just did going through that PowerPoint. That's what you're going to do with your group. You're going to walk them through that conversation that I just described. And then for the debriefer, I also have a tool from the pro-social people that I'm going to give you. And the debriefer, just to remind you quickly, that's the person in your group who, when the project is done, kind of reflects on how well the team worked together. And when you're reflecting on how well the team worked together, there's a couple points to note. First of all, you're not just doing it from your own perspective. You're not just saying, here, well, from my point of view, the group did well on these things. You actually have to talk to the members of your group and ask them what their experience was like. So you want to consult all the other members of the group and get their views. Like, how well did we do? And the focus of the report is, again, it's going to be these 8 common design principles that Eleanor Ostrom identified, right? The 8 principles that you follow to have a successful group and to successfully manage a common pool resource. And you want to be asking, well, how well did our group do that as a group? How well did we satisfy the 8 design principles? So you guys have a common pool resource here, right? Which is like your time together as a group. And each other's talents and behaviors. Those are all sort of common pool resources that you share in common when working together in a group. How well did you do in satisfying the 8 principles? And as a debriefer, when you're going through this process, as I said, you want to get feedback from the other members in your group. You don't want to just make it up all yourself. And when you're getting that feedback, you can use this tool. So I'll give you a copy of this. You can print it out and you can have each member of your group essentially fill one out for you. And it's very simple to fill out. So basically what you're saying, well, I want you to rate your group on a scale from 0 to 10 at how well they satisfied the different 8 core principles. So at the end of each arrow is one of the core principles, and you can draw a dot on each line saying how well you think the group did. And so what I think you should do is have each member of the group fill this out themselves. And so have them draw a dot on each line, measuring how well your group did at managing the different 8 principles or satisfying the different 8 principles. So here's an example of how 2 different people might fill out this questionnaire after doing group work together. So you see the person with the red line and the person with the green line had different opinions about how well the group did at meeting the different or satisfying the different design principles. And what you could do, ideally, after you get each person to fill it out individually, you can create a kind of common one where you recreate all the different circles on one map. So you can kind of get a sense for the diversity of opinion on how well your group did at satisfying the different principles. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about it for now. I'm going to put these tools online on Moodle. You'll be able to find the PowerPoint for going through the matrix if you're a matrix facilitator, and you'll also find that handout if you're a debriefer. And if you have any questions about how to use either one of those things, you can come to my academic support hours and I can talk you through them again in person if I need to clarify anything for you. Thanks very much.